Bun venit la punctul de plecare. De numai câteva minute am terminat lucrul la traducerea acestei emisiuni, așa că vă imaginați, sunt încă plin de emoțiile și de impresiile pe care le-am dobândit, pentru că este într-adevăr o emisiune extrem de mișcătoare. Invitatul, Lucas Johnson, bărbat de culoare din Statele Unite, reflectă în prima parte a prezentării sale experiența multor băieți de culoare din Statele Unite, atrași de multe tentații, dar în același timp ținuți aproape, ținuți pe calea dreaptă de mame și de bunici care erau oameni credincioși, oameni cu principii sănătoase și în special oameni ai rugăciunii. Treptat, treptat, Lucas și-a găsit drumul în viață, care a însemnat jurnalism și comunicare, și a lucrat mulți ani la una dintre cele mai prestigioase agenții de presă din întreaga lume, Associated Press. Așa că vă dați seama, are foarte multe lucruri să ne împărtășească. Vă doresc vizionare cu folos. I'm so glad to meet you for the first time this way. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah. As I mentioned a few months ago, maybe 1 year ago, I read a short article you wrote for the Union Church paper in this region, Southern Tidings, and it was a short notice that you have worked for Associated Press. Oh my! And then with the help, then I learned on the internet that you wrote that book, Finding the Good. I ordered it, I read it, and that consolidated my decision to try to connect with you and here we are. Thank you again very much for coming.
Yeah, thank you for reaching out and thank you for ordering the book. I appreciate it.
Now, the name of the program, as you know, is The Starting Point, with an emphasis on early situations, encounters, influences, events in life, contributing to shaping the person you are now. So what would you like to share with us about your family of origin and some other situations or influences contributing to shaping you?
I grew up in a Christian family. I grew up Methodist,
Ah,
and my mother believed in prayer, but it was also on my father's side of the family where there were Seventh-day Adventists. And my grandmother in particular was a prayer warrior, as they say. And she would always diligently, keep the Sabbath, but she also believed in praying just about anything. I even mentioned in the book, I mean, before she put on clothes in the morning, she would pray and ask God, what do you think I should put on? And it's stuff like that, that dedication really stuck with me, even as a young person. I wasn't, just jumping up and down to go to church as a young person.
mhm,
I had to learn about Christianity on my own. And even in the Methodist church, as I got older, I started to, want more. And it's interesting. Some of the ministers, I could understand what they were saying, but it wasn't until I visited in an Adventist church
mm,
that I started really getting a message from the beginning to the end. It was like this prepared, and it wasn't like yelling and screaming, but it was structured to the point where at the end of the sermon, I wanted more. And
mm,
I wanted to come back the next Sabbath to get more. And it was at that point where I started really learning about Christ and God for myself and developing more of a prayer life to the point where I didn't even listen to secular music for a while. It was strictly contemporary Christian or gospel music, and
mhm,
I was fine with that.
mm,
Um, but that's just how convicted I was, and I think it's like anybody, I strayed a little, but I knew where to come back to, and I credit that to my my mother's prayers, even though she was Methodist, she prayed, Christ-centered woman, but definitely my grandmother, who was a prayer, and then as well as my grandfather, who also was prayed and was a Christian as well.
Yeah, we'll return to your grandfather, but you mentioned these first visits to the Adventist Church. Do you have and the impact they had on you? What about what age were you at that time?
I was in high school.
Oh, already in high school. I see.
Yeah, I was in high school, and what happened was, before I went to college, I had been attending this prayer meeting, and so with one of my cousins who was Adventist at the time, and he uh, was really about telling me about the last day events
Oh,
and just other things that really piqued my curiosity. And so I started learning, again, going to the prayer meeting, and I decided, um, I was like, I'd like to get baptized.
mhm.
And so he baptized me at a prayer meeting, and my mother didn't know about it because she had said, as long as you're in this house, you'll be Methodist, but when you leave, you can do whatever you want to do. And I knew I was about to leave to go to college. And so
Oh,
that's why I did what I did. But
mhm.
later, when she learned what I'd done, she didn't seem upset. I think because my sister had had a conversation with her and said, "Hey, he's a young man. He could be doing many unruly things, bad things, but he wants to know about Christ, whether it's Adventist, Methodist, or whatever. He wants to go to church. So we should be happy with that." And I think they got through to my mom.
Wonderful. In the book, you mention a moment when you're visiting the home of your grandparents, and found your grandfather in the backyard, if I remember correctly, under a
Yeah.
big tree,
A shade tree. Yeah.
and
I tree. Yeah.
he was praying uh,
Yeah.
alone, but with loud voice. I mean, audible.
Yeah.
Tell us more about that.
I don't think he knew I was nearby.
Yeah.
You know how, like any kid, you like to hang around your grandparents. And so this was a moment where I was thinking I was going to ask him something.
Mhm,
And that's when I saw him doing that. And I just kind of stopped
mhm,
and listened and realized what he was doing, that he was praying. I heard, him talk, ask God, and, it was kind of low, but I knew that's what he was doing because of the mention of God. And it was a very, because I never seen him pray before. I knew that he was a believer, but
mhm.
that was my first time actually hearing and seeing him. And it did have a lasting impact to
Yeah,
know that, as strong as he was, he still needed something stronger, something bigger than him.
yeah, yeah. In the book, you also speak about the trouble your father had with
Mhm,
alcohol and
mhm.
the very bad influence that had on him. I think you say he was, otherwise he was a very fine man, but on
He
the
was. He was an excellent school teacher.
uh,
And he taught school, and that's why it's amazing to me because I don't think he drank on the job as long as, from what I can recall, I think it was mostly on the weekends.
uh,
He would just let loose, as you say, people say, and he maybe in the evenings, but mainly the weekends,
mhm,
would go on this binge. It would be a gradual, like like the first weekend it wouldn't be as bad. But then the second weekend, it would be worse to the point where he would be, stumbling drunk and crawling drunk sometimes,
mhm,
where he would just crawl in the bed.
mhm,
And those were tough times because I didn't want him to stop and didn't think he would. But then one day he said that he had asked God to take the taste
mhm,
from his mouth.
mhm,
And, I was like, whatever, because he had promised that he was going to do and
mhm,
never did.
mhm,
And a few days went by. Well,
mhm,
1 week went by,
mhm,
no drinking.
mhm,
2 weeks went by, no drinking. A month went by, no drinking. And then the months turned to additional months and then a year.
Hmm.
And he did not drink anymore. And I later learned that it's really not a good thing to go cold turkey
Mhm,
to
mhm,
stop drinking because it could almost, so in some cases, really turn into death, depending on the situation.
mhm,
So he took a chance, but God not only spared his life,
mhm,
God did take the taste away.
mhm,
And in doing that, our relationship improved. We got closer, and it kind of happened at a time because I was getting ready to go to college.
mhm,
So I kind of needed him.
mhm,
I needed that father figure back. And he was that
mhm,
for the latter part of my life. And I let him know when I wrote the book, I shared what I was going to write. I said, I'm going to have to show
mhm,
the not so good stuff
mhm,
so that the good stuff will be more effective and
mhm,
people will really see the change that you made and how proud I am of the change you made. And so when I had the galley of the manuscript, I gave him one part to read, and before I knew it, he had read beyond that. And
mhm.
so I knew that he was enjoying or liked what I had written. But I wanted to make sure that he with what I'd written because it was some very personal things.
Yeah, wonderful. So you grew up in a situation, I mean, very very split. Your mother was so devout, so reliable, so hardworking. Your father was also hardworking, except of those
Mhm.
days, weekends, especially when he was almost totally uncontrollable, and
Mhm.
it was many times it was very frightening to you. Yeah.
Yeah, because I thought he was going to die. I
Hmm.
mean, when you see, I remember tiptoeing into the bedroom when I thought he had gone to sleep and like kind of putting my head on his chest to make sure he was still breathing
Hmm.
because of the state he was in. It was, a little scary.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, they were both good parents. And even though my father drank, I never saw him verbally abuse my mother. I never saw him,
Hmm.
he may have raised his voice every now and then, definitely nothing physical.
Hmm.
Um, but him, the alcohol did take a toll on him. So I was really glad when he did stop. But yeah, they were both great parents and they believed in hard work.
Hmm.
My two older sisters who they're like 15 years difference. They're
Oh.
they're older than me, but between those two is 10 months
Uh-huh.
difference. So
Hmm.
but they one went to law school for a while. The other one she ended up being an executive. The other one is in administration at a university. But they're both still alive, very wonderful. Both my parents are deceased, but my two sisters is like having
Hmm.
two additional moms
Hmm.
sometimes. But I love them both.
Wonderful. I suppose you were struggling seeing the situations in your life with your father. I mean, uh, have you been tempted to try alcohol?
When I was in college, I went to a party and there was some punch that was mixed with
Mm-hmm.
pure grain alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, when it's mixed, you don't quite know how strong it is. And so I took a couple of sips and I got a little tipsy. And I realized that because of what had happened to my dad and that it was probably in my genes, possibly, that I didn't drink anymore. I maybe drank a little bit of champagne a little bit after that, but no, nothing strong. Um,
Mm-hmm.
no, because
So,
I was just careful.
yeah. So it was quite a warning and like an immunization almost
Yeah,
in
yeah.
him. Yeah. Other, I don't know about the surroundings, the neighborhood where you grew up. Uh, anyway, those were quite tough times. Were there other bad influences around you? And if so, how did you manage to stay away from risky behaviors and things like that?
My mother was really strict. I remember she would only allow me to ride my bicycle up and down our street. It
Oh.
wasn't until I got much older that I was able to go. on the next street or so. And I had a couple of good friends that were in the neighborhood, and she knew them. And so those when we hung out, she would be around usually. Other times it would just be at school.
Mm,
But she was very, and I'm glad that she kind of was in that way because who knows the trouble I may have gotten into if she hadn't been on guard like she was. Um, but there were times where she would go because when her mother got sick, she would go to this neighborhood called Binghamton, which is where she grew up, and her sisters, my aunts, would be, and their sons and daughters. And so one aunt in particular had two sons that I was really close to. They were much older, but they were like big brothers. I didn't have a brother. So they kind of showed me tough love that I mentioned too in the book, and that helped me in regard too, because I think as a young man, you do need some guidance. Um, Granted, they had their own vices, but I didn't. They would always, and it's so intriguing, interesting that even though they did like some drugs, they would make sure that I did not.
mm,
Yeah, like you say, don't you do this. We're doing this right now, but don't you do this. And and I didn't. But they, in their own way, helped me as far as manhood goes in other ways.
yeah, very, very interesting. You have been protected in difficult times.
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
suppose
yeah.
quite a number of your schoolmates and were at your age were already in trouble. Yeah, you have been
Some
protected,
were, some were.
but
I
it was
I
not
do
widespread.
I do remember this one young lady around the corner from where I lived. I think her name was Kim, but I just remember hearing the news that she had gotten shot in the head,
Oh,
and I just never forgot that. But it just was a reminder of, yeah, the tough neighborhood. To put it in perspective, you've heard of Compton, probably the Compton in LA, tough neighborhood. Well, this was the equivalent of Compton where I was. It was called Orange Mound. And believe it or not, back in the 60s, it was a prominent neighborhood, but it started going down. So it became kind of rough, and it still is rough now in that area. Um, but yes, I'm fortunate that I was able to, you know, be where I am now. And I will say this, there's this saying that God hears the prayers generationally of the righteous, and I believe my grandmother was that a righteous praying woman. It's very, very sincere. And I truly believe, not just myself, but other relatives that she's prayed for the family, that God has honored her prayers over the years, even though she's no longer with us.
Wonderful. She was the maternal or the paternal
She
mother?
was my father's mother,
I see.
so my paternal grandmother.
I see. It just comes to my mind what has been in her soul, in her heart, knowing about your father having those problems with alcohol.
Yeah, and I know that she also prayed for him.
Hmm.
No, yeah. And I believe that that was part of the reason why he finally stopped or was able to finally stop too.
Yeah, very, very moving. What were you thinking on doing in life in those years?
I wanted I
Yes.
wanted to be a pilot, believe it or not. And I actually got a congressional nomination to the Air Force Academy.
Mhm,
But because of my vision, it wasn't where they wanted it to be. I think there was some kind of refraction or something in my vision.
mhm,
And so I could not be the pilot. I couldn't even be a technical navigator because I wanted to fly F-16s. And
mhm,
so I decided to go to Middle Tennessee State University because they have a top aeronautical program. Did
mhm,
really well, got high grades the first semester, but I couldn't afford the other um, requirements like the private pilot license and the other things that you had to get certifications that
mhm,
came along with the course. It just was really expensive and I couldn't do it at the time. So I still don't know how it happened, but I gravitated over to the communications and journalism department because I did always like to write. And I talked to an advisor, and before I knew it, I was enrolled in journalism courses. And that became my major, and my minor was English. And I started, you know, applying for writing scholarships, and I started getting this additional money in addition to my college scholarship, enough money that I was able to, my junior year, move off campus to get my own apartment.
Mm,
And it just kept going. I started getting internships. I got an internship with the then St. Petersburg Times, which was one of the top 5 papers in the nation at the time.
mm,
And then after that is when I got the internship with the Associated Press and stayed there. But yes, it was through just something I guess you could call it divine,
mm.
was where I needed to be, and it's where I am now.
What do you mean by, you said I've always loved writing or something like that. What do you mean, and how early did you realize that?
I used to write a lot of poetry.
Really?
Yes, I remember. You remember Vice President Dan Quayle?
Yes.
I wrote this poem, and I'm also a big supporter of veterans, particularly Vietnam veterans. And so I wrote this poem titled "They Gave Even Themselves," and I remember sending it to the White House. That I don't know what the cause was. Maybe I saw something on TV that he had done with tied to veterans, but I specifically addressed the letter and the letter rather, to him. And I was so surprised to get an official response. I don't think it was somebody else writing it. I think he actually responded on letterhead to this day because I had it examined and it was some official White House paper. But I want to believe it was his signature. He signed it. But anyway, I had it framed and I still have it to this day. But that was just an example of, and I also was inspired by Maya Angelou. And I wrote a poem and sent it to her, and she sent me a letter.
Fantastic.
She responded with a letter because I sponsored a poetry contest at my college. I started a magazine to help the different races and ethnicities communicate better. And I have always thought pretty ambitiously. So I thought, if I'm going to do a poetry contest, why not have one of the best to judge it?
Mhm.
And she responded, I wrote to her and she responded that she couldn't judge the poetry contest, but she wanted to make a donation
Oh,
of $250. She sent me a personal check for $250 to the prize money. But she also said that I never will forget that um you are going to do something um amazing.
hmm,
Keep me abreast of your life. I never forgot that.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Such a huge name, and
Yeah. I still have that letter. Actually, it's framed too, and it's hanging alongside because I also got a letter from Nikki Giovanni, who's another, she's now deceased. Both of them are now deceased.
hmm.
Nikki within the last couple of years, but she ended up being the judge for the poetry contest.
Oh.
Yeah. So that worked out. Yeah.
So you have been blessed in quite unusual ways.
Yeah.
I suppose that there are many young people trying to connect with big names of the day, and probably few of them get any response. But you have been blessed in a very special way.
I was really surprised to get those responses. Yeah, they definitely were blessings.
When you were studying journalism, uh, were you in a special attracted in a special way to some genres of journalism, like investigation or research or reporting on I don't know.
Social justice, even at that time, yeah, I wanted to, and religion.
Ah,
Um, I started writing religion stories dealing with religion, and there was a religion writer on the national desk. and we connected pretty well. And so when he saw that, I would pitch him ideas, and he would, if he liked it, most times he did, and we would go with that idea. But I enjoyed meeting different individuals in the entertainment industry, Christians,
Hmm.
particularly filmmakers like the Kendrick brothers, who did movies like Courageous, Fireproof, the really popular one that they did called War Room,
Hmm.
have been really box office hits, but they've been really, um, if you true to their faith, if you will. And so it was the opportunity to meet them, and I did and interview them for stories and others. So I really enjoyed that. But my main coverage at AP for 10 years was politics. I covered the Tennessee General Assembly. And then in addition to that, a big focus was on education. And I actually received an award from one of the children's advocacy groups because of my coverage of children's legislation during my time with the General Assembly.
I see. So you moved in circles of legislators and educators and Christian Christian filmmakers or different artists. It was quite a privilege as well, yeah. Not to cover crime and yeah, things like that, I suppose.
I did, but at the same time, I did have to cover the dirty stuff too. And I won't say dirty stuff, but as time went on, we know that things are going to get worse. Like they are now, it's just kind of bad all around. So there was more crime, more crazy things happen. And so day to day, I didn't quite know what I would be doing. Like I might be called, for instance, there was an incident at a theater where someone threatened people with a machete.
Oh.
Yeah, and I had to leave the capital and go cover that. There was a really bad tornado that did some bad destruction in West Tennessee, and I'm in Middle Tennessee, so I had to leave again the legislature and drive all the way to West Tennessee, 3 hours to cover that storm damage. So there were things like that, and as a young reporter, you got this adrenaline rush. You're young, you enjoy it. But as you get older, you kind of want more stability.
Mhm.
Like you kind of want to know, I kind of know what I'll be doing tomorrow
Mhm.
and be able to plan for tomorrow.
I see.
But when you're in the news, you really don't know. When you're doing general assignment stuff, you really don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I kind of wanted to get away from that, which is why in 2016, I had an opportunity to go into academia.
Mhm.
And I was over media relations at a university called Tennessee State University.
Mhm.
And I stayed there 6.5 years.
Yeah, before we come to that, let's remain for a few more minutes on your
Yeah.
work for Associated Press. So, do you remember some specific uh, events you have covered or uh, people you have met? Uh, I mean, beyond your journalistic interest, having an impact on you as a person?
Mhm. Yes, there was one story in particular. It was an older gentleman that I was assigned to cover the Alex Haley Museum in Henning, Tennessee, which is not far from Memphis, Tennessee, one of the main cities in Tennessee. And so in meeting him, I just found he was the curator of the Alex Haley Museum. So I took a tour, but it was just incredible to hear his stories of how he came up through segregation, the Jim Crow era, and how he battled the brutal racism. Um,
Uh,
but he met,
just a moment. Some of our viewers may know about Alex Haley, many maybe not. So tell us a few words on him and his
yeah,
groundbreaking research and writing.
he wrote a book called Roots,
Yeah.
which actually was the first African Americans who, because of slavery, didn't think they could go back and trace like where they came from. And so he spent 12 years doing research and finally wrote the book called Roots, which became a Pulitzer Prize winning book. A miniseries was spawned from it that was watched by basically half of America. Yeah, and it's still a phenomenon to this day, still an impact on American culture. But this man, Fred Montgomery, was his childhood friend. And so we became really close after I did a story for him for the Associated Press. And one day when I went back to visit him, because I had lost my grandfather a year before meeting him. And so he became like this surrogate grandfather. So we
Mm,
became close. And he said, I want to show you something. And he pulls out this safe, and in this safe are audio tapes where Alex Haley had made of him planning to write a book.
mm,
But Haley died before getting started. And so Mr. Montgomery asked me if I would complete the work. Uh, and I told him, well, let me think about it. And I prayed about it and got back to him. And I ended up writing the book from my perspective. And it ended up being called Finding the Good,
mhm.
which I took from Alex Haley's famous quote, find the good and praise it.
Oh, so it was from a quote from Alex Haley.
Yeah, I derived it from that quote. It just seemed appropriate because when I found out about that quote, it resonated with me. Find the good and praise it. And I was like, a good title would be Finding the Good,
Mm,
Find the Good.
mm,
It just kind of was not just a catchphrase, but something that we as individuals could strive to do, and should do. Um, and I thought about, scriptures in the Bible, particularly Romans, about, all good things work for the good,
mm.
all things work for the good. And so that was something that stayed with me. And it also played a part in that title, Finding the Good.
So what was so special about this Fred Montgomery, which not only helped you to do your assignment, uh,
Mm.
but to develop and to cultivate a personal friendship with him and a transformative one for you? What
He
was,
was a
yeah.
he was another person that believed in praying.
Mm,
I saw that come through. There were times we would pray together. Like before I would do an interview with him, I would pray,
mm,
uh, which is something customary that I would do and still do before writing any story. I
really?
say a prayer, yeah. But with him, that was something I saw him do, and he was just a believer, and he tried to definitely stick with it, and he did. It was just natural, and I was impressed with that.
Mhm. So what was his work? Tell us more about him.
He was not only the curator of the Alex Haley Museum, but he was the mayor of the town. He was the first Black mayor of Henning, Tennessee. And that's what had intrigued Alex so much because he had wanted to do a book about Henning, but he wanted to also focus on Fred Montgomery and just his amazing life and how he lost two sons in separate drowning accidents.
Mm,
And he wanted, despite his faith, he at one time, the burden was so much after that happened that he wanted to take his own life.
mm,
But God had other plans. For
mm,
instance, there was one time when he was in his pickup and he was going to drive off the side of this bridge. But when he had attempted to turn the steering wheel, it locked up on the bridge. But as soon as he got across, it unlocked mysteriously. And so and it was after that he developed a new mindset. And people, particularly white people that he thought hated him because he was Black or disliked him, gave encouraging words about the passing of his son and consoled him. And their tears and his tears kind of wiped away the hatred that he felt. And he saw this opportunity to help maybe unite the town even more. And
mm,
so that's when he ran for mayor and won, beating out two other white opponents
mm.
to become the first Black mayor of Henning, Tennessee.
Yeah. You have alluded already to several Christian aspects of writing, like praying before writing, making connections with Bible passages and things like that. So, beyond of that, in what ways your Christian mindset and your faith uh, was influencing or guiding or informing your working as a journalist?
Um, it helped me to be, um, I guess you could say, humble, but also true, be truthful, and seek the truth, um, not be swayed by um, anything that would shine a negative light on what I was doing,
Mhm,
but to yeah, just seek justice in ways and the truth. Um, and that's kind of what I still do, in my writing. Um, and just, be as honest as possible
mhm.
and fair.
It's interesting you mentioned humility, fairness. Yeah, uh, in fact, reality is more complex, especially speaking of people, more complex than we ever
Yeah.
can,
Yeah.
discern. And there is always a danger to get captive to some prejudice or the first impression we get about someone, and keep bringing arguments or finding evidences to support our prejudice, our preconception, I should say. And so being humble, being flexible, being fair, it's so precious. In spite of those, are you aware of any situation when in time you realized that you misrepresented a person you wrote about?
No, I took great pains not to do that.
Mhm,
I wanted to, and even like if I'm interviewing someone,
mhm,
I give both sides. Like if someone is being accused of something, I give the person that's being accused and the accuser opportunity to make comments. And if a person doesn't respond, then I'll say that, they were given an opportunity to comment and they didn't, or did not respond immediately. I tried to stay away from saying no comment, or just say they didn't respond back immediately or something like that. But would give both sides an opportunity. And again, that's just part of being fair um, journalism, which you don't always get. In social media today, it's usually just one-sided.
mhm,
And so that's one thing I valued about the Associated Press
mhm,
was just being really factual. And it's still a respected organization. It's the world's oldest and largest organization. Mark Twain talked about it
mhm.
in his day. Yeah. So I still value, what they produce.
I'm thinking on hopefully some young people watching this interview, and some of them may have this idea of working for the press, becoming journalists, one genre or another. So I ask these questions with an intention to give them the opportunity to hear from a veteran
Mhm.
journalist. And uh, what are some dangers journalists may encounter? What are some of the traps they, someone may throw in front of them?
Maybe showing favoritism,
Mhm,
being one-sided, not reporting both sides of the story.
mhm,
Um, and maybe taking on more of a personal vendetta if they want to get at someone
mhm,
and not necessarily reporting the news, but doing it as a way to get back at somebody. And you want to avoid that. You want to report the news as fair as possible. Um, yeah. So, but yeah, I never really got in those situations.
mhm. Finding the good is, however, not probably, as far as I perceive, is not the is not a definition of an strong journalist. Uh,
Mhm.
I don't know. They Someone who is trying to find the good may be perceived as a toothless journalist. Someone who
Mhm.
tries to
Yeah.
avoid the dark
Yeah.
chapters in the life of someone. What do you say? Trying to find the good makes one a good journalist in a very competitive market.
I think you have to look at both sides. You know, there's news, but see, I also do freelance writing. If I'm writing hard news, then I am writing a news story. But if there's like a feature story
Mhm.
and I'm freelancing, then I can write whatever I want to. And in those instances, depending on the story, I do try to look for opportunities where that is promoted. Like there's not all like I don't go out looking to find or finding the good theme, but if there's an opportunity to promote something positive that someone is doing, then I do look for those types of stories. And usually what they are, they're more human interest stories, inspiring stories. And that's what I look for. And I think you can never get enough of those stories of the human interest, in particular, the stories of redemption.
Mm, redemption, yeah. At one time, you have worked with another writer, Keith Strickland,
Mhm.
to a second book. How did you meet him, and what was his story, and what was your contribution to that book, Youth Change Agent?
Yeah, he is that redemption story that I mentioned. And for the longest, this person was trying to get me to meet him. And I'm always, when I was with AP, always being pitched story ideas and saying you should meet this person. And so finally, I had an opportunity to do it, and I sat down and talked to him and found out more about him. And he was at one time a former drug dealer
Mhm.
in Atlanta, and he was facing 30 years in prison.
Ju-
And the judge,
But that was not his first encounter.
no, yeah, he had been doing, yeah, yeah. And for this one incident, he was facing 30 years. And so the judge, he had been trying to, I think he had slowly been kind of trying to change his life. But the judge, I think, got a whiff of that and saw that, okay, here's someone that, because of what he's doing, like when he was out on bail, he was really doing things to help others. And the judge decided, I'm going to do something different this time. I'm going to go with my gut and give this guy an opportunity, give him a second chance, in other words. And he did, and Keith made the most of it. And so he started this agency called Making the Transition that really goes into neighborhoods and high schools and works with troubled youth to keep them from making bad decisions and just staying out of prison, number one, but also helping them build character and giving them the resources to be successful. And he's, gotten national attention. He's probably the only ex-felon that's been a consultant to three presidential administrations, including the current one. And so, which actually makes four presidential administrations. And so, he's doing really well, and I consider him a good friend, and he's continuing to expand what he's doing, working with different school districts across the country. And so, yeah, he's definitely a story of someone who was given the opportunity to do something different, and he made the most of it.
Yeah.
And that's what really intrigued me the most about him.
So he has a full-fledged program of putting older people and young people in a mentorship relationship, yeah,
Yes.
back to them though during those turbulent
Mhm.
young, I mean, youth years, and to try to prevent them or to help them if they have lapses, moral lapses, or encounters with the law, to help them regain their footing and start all over again. Yeah.
Yeah, and basically too, the book that we wrote together is if someone wants to be a mentor to someone but don't know like where to start, the book gives them guidance on how to do that.
Are you aware of the impact of that book? How widespread it is? What do you know about that?
I do know some school districts are wanting to get it because he goes in lectures to different school districts and works and holds workshops with administrators and teachers on how to be mentors. And so this book is a tool that they can use.
Mhm. Uh, I was very pleasantly surprised to see on your first book, Finding the Good, among the endorsements, some very, very important names in both national and
Mhm.
international uh,
Mhm.
arena. There is a forward, I think, by a former uh, senator
Mhm.
or yeah, or representative, senator, yeah, uh,
Center.
a white man, a Republican man, for that
Yeah.
matter, and he wrote a very very impressive forward to your book. And you also have endorsements for people like Desmond Tutu and uh,
Yeah.
and others. How did you connect with these people, and what did it take to have them receiving the book, reading it,
Mhm.
writing those endorsements? You have quite an impressive collection of
Yeah.
endorsements. Probably they are not the only one. You have to select two of them.
Yeah. I think it was moving probably most from Desmond Tutu because his daughter was at the Race Relations Institute at Fisk University some years ago. And that's how I even was able to, I gave her a book and just by chance say, would you give this to your dad? And
Oh,
she did give it to him. And not only did she give it to him, he apparently read it. And well, because I know he read some of it, but so enough to say that he thought it was deeply touching and I would cherish it for a long time. Um, but then also with Senator Alexander, Lamar Alexander, who at one time considered running for president, but he was also the U.S. Secretary of State. I'm sorry, U.S. Secretary of Education.
yes.
He um he was good friends with Alex Haley. They were really close. And so the reason I reached out to him is because number one, because of that connection, but he also knew Mr. Montgomery. Um, and because I don't shy away from creating opportunities. He's a Republican, and because of the divisiveness going on in the country, I wanted to use that as an opportunity to maybe have show uniting, if you will, someone from a more conservative perspective, but he also believed in finding the good.
Mhm.
Um, in that forward, he also talked about why he mentioned finding the good when he was asked to be part of the second inauguration of Barack Obama, and why he said what he said. Because again, of the divided situation, he wanted to show, as Alex Haley had been promoting, finding the good, that we're more alike than we are different. And um, I wanted to also show that in the book. And I knew that it would also cause conversation because he is a Republican and is conservative, but at the same time, he believes in good values. Um, and that's what he talked about. You know, regardless of where we come from, our ethnicity, our race, finding the good is universal.
Hmm.
You know, God is universal. And so that's what I kind of wanted to show without being preachy.
Hmm.
And I think it came across.
Wonderful, wonderful. The last few minutes of our interview already. Uh, Would you have a word of advice to some young people who are contemplating doing journalism? You gave already a good number of lessons, but
Mhm.
something more personal, more specific.
Yes, when I lecture to high school students and the college students, I always ask who has a story? And everybody usually raises their hand because we all have a story to share. And I would say, take the opportunity to write about something that you love. Don't be concerned about how much money you're going to make,
Mhm.
because if you write about something you're passionate about, the money will come.
Mm.
So do that and and spread, share your story and or regardless of what it's about. If you think it has an opportunity to make an impact on somebody's life, do it.
Thank you. A last question. You have mentioned already the impact of the social media and
Hmm.
very partisan representations of
Hmm.
reality, and this is indeed one of the most troubling aspects of our times. How to maintain a sane mind, how to discern between truthful representations of news and events and personalities, and to discard those who are deceptive or unilateral or whatever. How to develop our spiritual discernment.
I think the best way to do it, I always again start with prayer,
Hmm.
with guidance on how to, help to be discerning. Um, that always is a positive, but just in general, you kind of know if something is one-sided, then you don't buy into it. Do your own investigation and look for, do a deeper dive. Um, Go to people that you feel are credible. And there's usually always someone that we can, a scholar or someone that you can maybe email or contact to say, hey, what do you think about this? Or if you know someone that's in that industry or is tied to that subject, contact that person, but don't always believe what you hear initially.
So you mentioned, first of all, you mentioned prayer. You mean to pray before listening to the news or reading the newspaper?
I pray for discernment.
For discernment. Yes, yes.
Yeah, 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 for
That's
better understanding.
that's very interesting. This is the first time in my life when I hear
Because I
something
think
like that. It's not coming from a preacher, it's coming from a journalist.
Because it was coming from me. I'm just telling you what I do, how I practice. And I think, like remember, I was telling you how my grandmother prayed about everything, what clothes to put on. So why would I not pray for understanding before taking on a situation? Like, God, just a brief ask, help me to understand this better. Help me to see the truth in this. I think we should all do that in anything. I think we'll be better for it because that's what God wants us to do. He wants us to trust him in everything,
Yes,
even in, I mean, the smallest things.
yes.
If you make a habit of doing the smallest things, then
Mm.
I think you'll be able to deal with the big things.
Thank you so much. It was so warm and so real, so authentic. I appreciate very much your participation. Thank you very much. May God continue to bless and to inspire and to make you an influence for others also to find the good. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
All right.
Cred că ați reținut spre sfârșitul discuției un sfat foarte direct și neașteptat venit din partea unui jurnalist. Înainte să scrieți ceva, înainte să citiți o știre sau să urmăriți un jurnal de știri, rugați-vă pentru discernământ spiritual, rugați-vă ca ceea ce citiți să vă ajute să înțelegeți viața și să luați hotărâri înțelepte. Foarte impresionant ca un asemenea sfat să nu vină din partea unui predicator, așa cum poate ar fi de așteptat, deși eu n-am auzit pe niciun predicator spunând așa ceva, cel puțin nu țin minte, și din partea unui jurnalist. Cred că ați păstrat multe dintre experiențele de viață și dintre sfaturile acestui om deosebit și vă doresc să le puteți pune în practică. Acum, la începutul unei noi săptămâni, discuția cu Lucas Johnson ne dă un punct de plecare deosebit. Eu vă aștept la următoarea ediție.